This interview is part of the Veterans Military Oral History Project sponsored by the Library of Congress and the Lowell Area Historical Museum. Jim White will be operating the camera. Today's date is February 20th, 2006. We will be interviewing Tom Westbrook in Saranac, Michigan, and currently resides at 59 South Pleasant Street in Saranac. Good afternoon, Mr. Westbrook. Got a few questions I'd like to ask you about your experience in World War II. First of all, this doesn't have anything to do with World War II, but what year were you born? What's your birth date?
July 3rd, 1919.
Where were you born?
Ionia Township.
When did you enlist?
I went down and enlisted January 3rd, 1942.
And you're holding a picture taken at that enlistment time or close to it?
This is after I got down to Keeper Field.
Okay. How old were you at that time?
22.
Okay. Mr. Westbrook, why did you enlist? Can you give us the reason why you enlisted?
Because I thought it was the thing to do.
Okay.
I was very unhappy about the Japanese, what they'd done to Pearl Harbor.
And that's what, it seems like it was almost every man at that time felt that,
Yes,
that he had to go in.
yes, it was a very popular thing to do.
Where did you go for basic training?
I went to Keeper Field, Mississippi, Loxie, Mississippi.
Okay, what were some of the things you had to adjust to in your new life in the military?
Well, there's new routine discipline.
What was your daily routine?
Well, at first, we got our basic training, and then when we got through our basic training, they gave us 2 weeks of KP. That's the ones that had qualified for mechanics, airplane mechanics school. And that's so we wouldn't have to do any more KP while we were in school.
And KP was what?
Kitchen police,
Which said that you were doing what?
scrubbing fans, pots and pans, cleaning up the mess hall, routine
In the military, they called that kitchen police, right?
kitchen police.
Okay. Well, in basic, how did you live and how was the food?
Food was very good there. The food was very good at Keeper Field. And we got a lot of more southern food than ever. We got, I wouldn't name what we've gotten.
It wasn't meat and potatoes like you'd get up north here,
Oh yeah, we got that too.
did you? What kind of training, I mean, your daily, I mean, was it a lot of drill? Was it a lot of
Well,
training?
when we got through our basic training, so we could march 1, 2, 3, 4. And because we had to march back towards the school. And the school was run on 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts.
So 24 hours a day.
Yeah, we run 24 hours a day. And then each phase of the school was 10 days, and there was 11 phases. And I've done very well at school. They wanted me to volunteer to be an instructor, and I made up my mind I wanted to move.
Where to?
I had no idea. And they were, out of 1,100 of us that graduated in June, there was 43 of us got sent overseas right from school.
Okay, now the date is now what?
I don't know the date, it was in June, it's in July when we shipped.
July 42?
Yeah, July, yeah.
Okay, well, in basic training, I assume you were in tents, right?
No, we were in,
Oh, really,
we
barracks?
were in barracks.
Okay. How did you feel about being one of the 43 selected to go overseas right away?
Well, we didn't have much time to think about it. We thought, what we figured, they told us we would be assigned to an outfit and get a 15-day furlough if we were eligible for it. And I went up and asked about my 15-day furlough in Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, where they sent us for basic, for overseas training and replacement. So get that when you're assigned to your permanent base. And I was in Ipswich, Australia.
That's where they sent you?
Well, that's where at one of the places when when we got off the boat, we went to the west coast and went up to what was it, Angel Island. We were just out by Angel Island.
Uh-huh.
Little base there. Well, Angel Island is the name of it, the military base there. And that's where we got our, they put us into wool ODs because it was chilly in July out there, latter part of July. And that's where we waited to get on board the ship.
Did, what kind of thoughts did you have about getting aboard that ship? I mean, here, this is the ship that's going to take you to the war zone, or pretty close to it anyway, maybe for your next training session, but you're certainly going to go through hostile waters going to Australia.
Well, we didn't really give it much thought until we got on the boat. I remember going under the Golden Gate Bridge. It was, the top of it was overcast, in the clouds, not a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And I kept asking the sailors, when are we going to join the convoy? And he says, we don't go in convoy. It takes them 9 minutes to get it lined up with a torpedo, and we change course every 9 minutes. It could take 10 minutes. And sit back here on the fantail, and every 9 minutes, we turn.
And the Japanese couldn't do it any sooner than that?
Well, that's what they said.
Okay, you took their word for it, apparently it worked.
And we were on KP every other day on board ship. I was very fortunate I never got seasick.
How about the other guys? Did many?
Well, some of them, as soon as they pulled anchor, they were done. And most of them got seasick, maybe a couple, 3 days, and it was over. We was on board ship for 23 days. First we stopped on the way at Auckland, New Zealand, and they gave us shore leave there. And then we went around to another town we was at. We stopped Auckland, we got 2 days shore leave. And then we went to Wellington and we got a 1 day shore leave there.
These were all, I have some questions about the boat that you were on. What kind of ship was it?
It was a USS Mount Vernon that had been a luxury liner. The boats were 7 deep in the swimming pool.
In the swimming pool?
Yeah, they drained it, of course.
Yeah.
And because we were all, the group I was in, there was probably 350 or so, we were all buck privates. And they got us down on D deck. We didn't have much prestige for us.
So do you want to describe your stateroom on D-deck?
Well, it was, the guy above me, his name was Warren West, and he was one of those boys that got seasick.
So you had to worry about that for 23 days?
Well, I'd taken, I was on KP, and they were pretty good on this ship. And I'd taken down something to eat, and gosh, it smells good. Then I'd hold it, take the lineman, always wore the liner out of the helmet, carried their helmet, and I'd hold that up, and he'd throw up. And then I'd take and rinse it out, and come back to the water and wash his face down.
Well, this went on for 23 days? He never did get over it, or just the first few?
When we got off at Auckland, he was all right. As soon as the anchor dropped again.
So that was most of the way?
Yeah. And something really strange happened. We went to a replacement center in Melbourne, Australia. And that's where I lost our senior John West. We coming under the Golden Gate Bridge about the 1st or 2nd of November, I haven't got the right date on that. In 1945, I heard a weak little voice, "Westbrook, are you just getting home?"
So you saw him again?
Here's Warren West.
Oh.
He had 2 of his buddies holding him up. He was coming under the Golden Gate Bridge. They give us a meal ticket on that, and you got it punched. We got 2 meals a day. And I said, didn't get seasick, did you, John? He said, "Sure, my meal ticket."
Wasn't punched.
Been punched once.
So he never got over it, eh?
No.
This ship, about how many people, how many soldiers were on it?
They told us 6,000. It was a pretty good sized ship. I think it was, they told us it was one of the 6th largest in the world.
What do you figure when it was doing peacetime duty as a luxury liner, it would carry? Maybe 1,000?
I have no idea.
But certainly not
It
6,000.
had to be a lot better conditions than it probably,
Yeah.
probably 2,500, 3,000
You then did duty in Australia, right?
Yes.
What was your duty there?
Well, just about everything. We got sent out to the replacement there in Melbourne, Australia. First thing they did there, the Japs are still pushing down. They issued us a Duran rifle and a bayonet. We got 90 days infantry training. The Japs are still coming down. And
But now your specialty was going to be air mechanic, right?
yes,
But they gave you infantry training.
we got infantry training
Yeah,
there
okay.
because they thought we'd need it. And they gave us infantry equipment, Grand rifle and bayonet. We went out on the range, we shot it. I'd never seen one before.
Oh, really?
And we stayed in the cricket club there. That's just about like the grandstand down your free fair where we stayed. Bunked in. Well, some of the boys had tents. Before I got out of there, I got in a tent. And that was pretty darn cold. That was in July of, well, the latter part of July.
Oh, 42?
42 in August, September, we were there. And then they sent a detachment of 225 out of the little bush town of Takeoff. It's on the New South Wales and border is about 160 miles out. And every state in Florida got their own railroads and they're different gauge. And we were right on the Victoria, New South Wales border, and got caught in town. There was any hospital around out in Unit, Melbourne shipping out while you get on stevedore detail.
Oh, yeah. What kind of, did you start your airplane training or airplane mechanic training there?
No, I got that in the States.
Oh, in the States, okay.
Yeah, that was it was a good course.
Yeah.
I got along good with it. They wanted me to be an instructor, but I was ready to move.
Oh, I see, now I got it straight. So you were really staging in Australia to go over to the islands, right, the Pacific Islands,
Well, we've
preparing.
done a lot of different things there. We pulled guard duty out to this one base that was being evacuated. It was a huge base. And it was supposed to be the last stand in Australia. By that time, they got the Japs stopped. And we were pulling guard and KP for headquarters and headquarters.
At that time, there was a real concern that the Japanese might attack Australia, right?
Oh, yes, it was. We were the first one out there, yes.
Yeah. And then from there, you got on another ship and got to the Pacific Islands?
We went, from then we went up to the Brisbane area. And I was in, sent us out to Amberley Field. And the replacement center went up there. This outfit was overseas, it just came back from the bush back in there to Amberley Field. That was in Ipswich, just north of Brisbane. And it was an outfit that was overseas in Westbrook. All old soldiers, you know, been in the service probably a lot of them 20 years or better. It was a good outfit.
How did the American soldiers get along with the Australian soldiers?
We got one good.
Good.
Yeah, we got along great with the old Australian digger, the infantryman, he had training and they'd been in Africa fighting, helping England, and they moved them back. They were good soldiers because they had experience.
And after you left Australia, you're aboard ship again for some time, right?
Well, we went from Brisbane to Townsville, Australia, and we overhauled. I worked at a big depot there, and helped overhauling aircraft engines. And,
Was this part of your training, or just?
No, that was duty.
Okay.
We worked 7 days a week, probably 10 or 12 hours a day, from 1 until 9. Overhauling aircraft engines. I got an engine specialist rating there, and when I left there, well, they offered me, I was a corporal for that, and they offered me a staff sergeant's stick. I was ready to move. I'd been in a big outfit, well, probably at least 3,000 men. I was in an outfit of about 230, small outfit, good outfit. And, I figured they'd be better off there. This captain that was there, Captain Monday, was one of the best officers I ever worked with. And he offered me a staff sergeant to stay, and I was ready to move. And I had quite an experience coming back home. I come back to the States. 9 of us come back. Camp Stolman, California. We were standing in line to get another beer. And somebody said, Westbrook, you remember you told me that you wouldn't stay if I made you a brigadier general.
That was him?
Captain Monday. He was a major at that time. He was probably one of the best officers I had.
When you were aboard ship and even in Australia, did you do any thinking about, eventually you'd be in the war zone and what that would be like, or did you kind of keep that out of your mind?
That's one reason I want to leave Townsville. I want to know what my reaction would be.
Oh, really?
Probably didn't have good sense.
What types of things did you do to occupy your time? Like you had 12 on, 12 off on shore, but you had a lot of time aboard ship. What kind of things did you guys do to occupy your time?
We played cards and things like that.
And again, did you think much about the future war zone that you'd be in, or just kind of kept that out of your mind?
Probably didn't try to think about it.
No, just live day to day?
I first went up and we went on a Liberty ship. That's a freighter, one of them they built a bunch of them. We got on that at Townsville, and they left the freight out of one hold down there, and you take your blankets and sleep anywhere you wanted down there. And they handed you a box of K rations in the morning, a box of K rations at night.
And the Liberty ships were built just to transport materials and men across.
They were freighters.
Yeah. And I believe the record for a Liberty ship, they built one from the ground up in a week.
Yeah.
I mean, they built them pretty quickly.
They built them fast.
Yeah. Well, we need to get to the islands. What was the first island in the Pacific
war
zone that you made fall at?
Well, Townsville was considered combat area, but never much problem there.
What island was that?
That was in Australia.
Okay.
Australia. But then they went to Finchhaven, British New Guinea. That's the east end of Guinea. And we were there about 6 weeks. Now it rained. They got 198 inches of rain there a year. To get an idea what they got. Good GI shoes that last about a week or 10 days. You out walking them, you get so soggy that the bottoms would fall out.
In New Guinea, here we have a kid from Ionia who left Ionia, maybe 4 or 5 months before, maybe more, and now you're in New Guinea. Now that's completely different from...
You see, I was in Australia for about a year.
Oh, okay. And we're a little over a year then from...
See, there weren't any place up New Guinea yet for us.
Oh, okay. That's right. But what were your reactions to New Guinea?
It was not a nice place to be.
Why?
Oh, they had some beautiful birds there. They had cockatiels and all kinds of birds, monkeys. But mosquitoes were terrible. They were still some Jap snipers as tight as butt up in palm trees. The guys shot them up there and they're still hanging in the trees.
Was that where you first saw any active duty or combat situations?
Well, that was actually, as far as combat, we didn't have any problem there at all.
Okay.
Then they sent us to, we was there about 6 weeks, and they sent us, put us on another Liberty ship, and they sent us to Hollandia, and that was Dutch New Guinea. And that was MacArthur's headquarters there. And that was, the weather was better, but they still had the mosquitoes. We actually went in the staging area there. And they checked all your equipment and gave you all your shots again.
How many of the guys came down with like malaria or dengue fever?
A lot of them. I have no idea.
Did you ever have malaria or dengue fever?
I had dengue fever, but I never had malaria. I was taking Atterburn tablets and pretty much as yellow as cinnamon.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, I took them pretty religious. Boys had rumors around and make them sterile.
Apparently that's not the case. I know you had children. You have some pictures of, you have some pictures there of New Guinea. We're going to just take a look at some of those. But what was the worst part of New Guinea, being stationed there for as long as you were?
New Guinea, British New Guinea is the worst.
Why?
Well, the rain, and mosquitoes. And we were right between two mountain ranges. You could look out there and maybe be from 100 yards up the mess tent. So let's go up mess tent. The sun would be shining beautiful before you get to the mess tent. It'd be downpour rain.
Okay, so now you're in a tent now, right?
Right between mountain ranges.
Oh. And you lived in a tent. What types of things crawled in there at night?
Lizards, rats.
Did you ever get used to that?
No.
Any
We had to be on camp guard. Up on, everybody pulled camp guard, regardless of rank. And you could see somebody who couldn't sleep. The rats would run on the top of the tents, and somebody couldn't sleep. He was out there beating on the tent with a stick trying to get a rat. And they'd be in the foxholes. We spent a lot of time in the foxholes on more time.
Okay. Okay. You went from New Guinea to Morotai. What was your experience in Morotai?
Most of it wasn't good.
Okay.
We were working on a Ford-based fighter. We were there probably 6 weeks before they done any missions out of there. They'd show combat shorts and they'd give them to us. We had movies and we'd get to them later on. Show the first plane to land on Mordecai Island. They'd show B-25 bristling with guns or a fighter plane. With the old C-47s, the troop carrier outfit, they've been flying in off the treetops almost as soon as it land right between the bulldozers. I was working on the runway.
So you were there to clear a runway for future,
Well, the engineers, combat engineers done that.
yeah, but I mean, your group at that time was
Well,
one of the
our
first.
job was, at that time, we got in and built a camp. And all the fuel come in 55-gallon barrels. I rolled barrels all over the Pacific. But all of it came in 55-gallon barrels when they first went in. It takes you take a Thunderbolt, pre-flight of Thunderbolt, put 35 gallons of gas.
Is that all they carried, 35 gallons?
No, they carry more than that, but
Oh.
that's just pre-flight and you get it
Oh.
ready before you turn it over to the pilot.
Oh, I see.
That's one of my jobs, is pre-flight them. And you normally aren't supposed to add any fuel, but we always top the tanks off.
Did you face any combat situations on Mordecai?
Before I did anywhere else.
Can you talk, do you remember the first time you faced a combat situation, and what happened and what was going through your mind?
Well, there were about 15 of us working in a gas dump, filling barrels from 12 to 12. The colored quartermaster was supposed to take us out. They were in separate branches covered for that time. And they were supposed to take us out of there, and we had trouble, and well, the Japs come over about 2 o'clock in the morning and blasted the place and set it all afire all around us. That was my first section. First time I really knew how to get scared. And the colored boys got in their trucks and left us there. Well, there's another guy named Nicholas, Morris Nicholas. And I got around and we started running out of the area and got challenged in that aircraft position. A lot of Japs could speak good English. We done quite a lot of explaining to them.
Oh, I see.
So
So they didn't know whether you were friend or foe.
that's right. And the Japs, of course, after they got a light there, that burning gas dump, why, they had something, it was only 12 miles away, they just pounded it all night
So on this island, what, about 12 miles away, I think you said,
long. Yeah.
there's a Japanese base, so the two groups are now sharing Mordecai.
Yes.
So what did this mean that we had two groups, the Americans and the Japanese, sharing a spot so close? How often were you under Japanese attack on Mordecai?
7, 8 times a night. They darn sure wanted not to come during the daylight.
Because of the American anti-aircraft?
They wouldn't never make it back.
So how did you protect yourself, you and the rest of the guys? How did you protect yourself from the bombing attacks?
You slip your shoes on, we slept raw because it was hot. And we slip our shoes on, we skin the hat and get in the foxhole. Drive the rats out.
Did you almost always find rats in the
We
foxhole?
always did. Got so you didn't, they'd leave, they might run the full length of you or something.
You got used to it?
Couldn't dig very deep.
Yeah.
You get down about that far, we get in a coral.
Yeah, it's crawling.
And then we got sandbags, and then we took them. When the Japs started dropping these phosphorus bombs, they were wicked. Well, you've seen these fireworks, the fair goes like this.
Yeah.
They dropped them on parachutes. And they'd piece that phosphorus and land on something, it'd burn right through it. If it landed on the wing of a plane, it'd burn right through into the gas tank.
Phosphorus will burn in water.
Yeah, you only have a pile of moon about that high the next morning.
Wow. So how did you, I mean, if you're being bombed all night and working all day, you must have been short of sleep.
It was most of the time. you got so that you go to bed and you come around again, and man, you go right back to sleep. No problem at all.
They'd bring what, an air raid siren when they heard a plane coming and everybody jump and...
They have 3 artillery, 3 single shots.
Oh, I see.
1, 2, 3, and all clear was in 1 shot.
Did many men get hurt or killed in these bombing runs?
Well, I don't know. A lot of guys, they had to come out with a little frag bomb, a little aluminum bomb. That was nasty. Our outfit got hit with that, and I was probably heard the news from the guys that got hit, but I never got it. Another guy in our tent didn't get hit. His name was Morris. He was from South Carolina. He's a slow in this.
So you're living in tents now, right?
Yeah, we were in tent.
Yeah. How hot did it get there at Mordecai?
Probably 115, 120. Wasn't unusual.
And coming from Michigan, that's something you weren't used to, I take it.
Well, come from Australia, northern Australia. See, I'd been there about a year. That's subtropics. They got pretty warm there. Then it get chilly there during the winter time, which is in July, August. Like it would get down in the upper 30s. Then by 10 o'clock, it'd be up in the 90s. That was set up there. New men would come over, replacements, and they'd come over, they'd come back with their long woolen underwear on. You guys freeze you on it. Well, a couple hours, they
Yeah.
were all through.
Now, after you left Mordecai, where'd you go?
We got on a convoy. The 13th Air Force come in and took it over. I was in the 5th. The 13th Air Force come took it over. And I missed my brother there by just 1 day.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was in the 13th Air Force. I'd worked on B-20, he flew in B-25s. I'd worked on planes that he flew in.
Really?
We worked on some of the 13th Air Force MP. Our outfit, the rest of the 5th Air Force went into the Philippines, and we didn't go because we were down to 90 men out of 230.
They were all dead, or they were
Well,
sectioned out to different areas?
They were, some of them, a lot of disease got them.
Yeah.
Malaria, dengue fever, Jonesville rot. We had a lot of things that come in.
So it sounds like the disease was almost worse than the Japanese.
Oh, yeah, it was really.
And then did you go to Okinawa after Mordecai? Or somewhere else in between?
On LSD after they moved the rest of the 5th Air Force up around Clark Field in the Philippines. And we couldn't move because we didn't have enough men. And they finally put us on an LSD, and we set off between Samar and Leyte. Them are 2 main islands in the Philippines. And made up a convoy, and that went into Okinawa, north end of Okinawa.
Was the LST pretty rough to sail on?
They didn't ride very good. They only draw about 6 foot of water.
Right, I think they drew 4 feet in the front and 10 in the back.
They didn't draw much.
No, and they were pretty much flat bottom, weren't
Well,
they?
I liked the LSD. I made 2 landings on it.
Did you?
Yeah, they fed you food. You had the same food before they had.
Oh, so for a soldier, an LST was pretty good duty, right?
I liked it. Some boys, some boys got seasick.
Yeah.
They didn't ride very good. You'd swear they'd bring you enough water, they'd slap it,
Yeah. Oh, they were flat bottom. What was your duty on Okinawa?
Well, we really never got set up. They never got the airfield finished. There was about 3 of us that worked down on the airfield. We was taking care of transit aircraft. It was they were bringing in supplies and stuff. And if we could get 6 C-47s in, and we were managing them. And that was one of the jobs. We were working with, what was that general's name? 4-star general in charge of 5th Air Force that time. I just can't think of his name right now, but he was always around there. Got so he'd come up with his work and he'd just write up his no military courtesy, no salute, I'll give you these. So it was in there, and that kind of an interesting thing that happened to me while I was a Fat Cat B-25, that was one that had been stripped down and made fancy for Colonel Powell, he was 35th Group headquarters squadron. We were assigned that up there. We were always, probably 2,000-3,000 miles ahead of them. And they were going to be based there. And we come in and landed these Fat Cat plane there. We had to keep 6 places for these C-47s. And I pulled him off onto the apron because I didn't have no other place to put him. He was chewing me out. Incompetent soldier and this and this and this and this. He didn't know I was in the 8th Service Squadron, one of the squadrons. This Jeep pulled out my seat, come right to attention, and this here, I think his name was Rodriguez. I don't know, 5-star general, 4-star general, charged the 5th Air Force around there. And I see this here colonel, what the boys called a chicken colonel. He'd come around and he would tune me out and incompetent, this and this and this. And this I see him come right to attention, this here speech pulled up, and I turned around, here's this 4-star general. He says, this colonel said to him, he's come in, he's going to be stationed there. All he says, now this incompetent sergeant, I heard him tell you he was out here at 4 o'clock. I was out here shortly afterward and he was here. And he thought he was entitled to one mistake. It was late in the afternoon. He did. He says, oh, Colonel, he says, it's no big problem. He says, we'll get a Jeep out here and we'll phone your plane out. He says, you can head right back to the Philippines and we'll launch you up here with a call for you. I won that one.
Chewing out, yeah. Now, what kind of aircraft did you work on? Was it just C-47s? With C-47 as a transport?
C-47 transport. I worked on them. I worked on about everything. The B-25s. Our main job was forward-based fighters, the old Thunderbolt, P-47.
Now, apparently their strategy for air-to-ground combat was they'd come in low. Do you have any indications that that was true?
Oh, yeah. The B-25 was a strafing outfit. I've seen them come in. I've seen those Thunderbolts come in. Of course, I think this was playing around more than anything. See who could get the little close. And they'd buzz the taxiway wouldn't be any further from here. Wouldn't be as far from here in the street. And they'd have to raise up to get over a Jeep.
Oh my goodness. Now,
Their props would be picking up all through the dust, and then they'd see who come closer. And I'd pick coconuts out of engine cells.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So they flew those things pretty dangerously.
Oh, yeah. Most of the fighter pilots are different than they are now. Most of them was 18, 19.
Yeah.
One was 22 years old. He was the old man.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So these are just a bunch of kids going crazy.
Oh, they were really, about a dozen pilots. Usually you lose 5 of them.
Well, the bombers, I know I've seen pictures of bombers coming back all shot up. Did that happen there also?
Now you see, they went back to BIAC, which back a couple of more hours, probably a couple of more hours flying time. And if they couldn't make it back, they used our base for emergency. I've seen them come back and shot up terribly, wounded them and everything. I worked on the 13th Air Force, took over when 90 of us reorganized in our outfit by we was working on transit aircraft, and we had a Jeep and I had 3 men besides myself, and we had slings and stuff for all the planes. Plane landed on the runway, we had to get them off the runway. Why, these slings, we knew where they'd hook in, and they'd be, if you got the ring in it like that, they'd be a hook waiting for you. Crashed them up, can't get them off the runway. And, some quite a, one person's come in, guy come in, and my gosh, he's coming in low. And he didn't act like it didn't matter. He landed, and I slammed the canopy back, and these guys knew he was filled up what they call a fine 40 gas, just like on a clipboard. He just kept on riding. And I finally says, "So what's the matter? Your landing gear failed?" And he says, "No." Very disgusted. I said, "What happened?" I just wasn't relaxing with them. They had a horn back to their head. Yes, I wondered what that damn buzzing was in my head. I just forgot to put the damn things down. Well, they were flying them here Thunderbolts on a 9-hour mission. Hot weather, they come back to soaking sweat.
Yeah.
And we picked it up. We let the landing gear down on, so we get the crash truck around. I just pick it up. Well, you let the landing gear down, and probably you can tow it back to the Jeep. That's what we done. And we could fix that plane. It turned out we could fix it. He come around and he said, "You think you can fix it, Dan? I don't want to have to pay for that damn thing."
Well, I hope not. Obviously they came back with casualties. How was it? Was it like the medics who brought the casualties and fatalities out of the bombers when they came back?
What the boys call the ambulance, we call them the meat wagon. An ambulance they'd land right on the runway. They'd take the wounded off before they moved the plane. That was top priority.
Yeah. Did planes also crash on takeoff?
Oh yeah, it wasn't unusual. They were taking them, we were on steel matting at first there. That was hard on tires. And they cut the tires. They what they call ground loop like this. They go about 100 yards. It was overloaded with gas and everything. He had 2 wing tanks and a belly tank. And when they pulled the tire, I'd tear them tanks off. And then they ground loop for about a couple 100 yards. And when they were spilling gas all the way, and when the gas when they hit the plane, it went. About 50% of them got out of it.
Really?
You would see him jumping, we got so he'd look up and see him well about, we'd be working about from the house to the street. Look up, see if he got so we'd look up and see if the pilot got out. And we'd go right back to work.
What kind of things, okay, you've got a bunch of young guys now in Okinawa who are involved in a war zone, but they do have time off. Can you tell me some of the characters or things that the guys did in their times off?
Probably couldn't publish.
Well,
No, we played cards. And if we were in the staging area, they had contests, see who could see who some sang and this and that. The colored boys are separate. They always won them. They had it built into them.
Can you tell me a little bit about Big Ed O'Neill?
Big Ernie?
Ernie O'Neill, I'm sorry.
There's 2 of the boys we called Eddie and Ernie. Big Ernie, he didn't shave very often. And I used to get the job of holding camp guard with him. We'd be outside of the we'd get up in the motor pool, sit in the Jeep, he'd go on, and he'd move around, there would be a target, he'd say, well, you go on. And they got so bad that they wouldn't shoot at the jet planes that come over, we was to concentrate on that peninsula. They'd do more damage if they shot them down than if they let them go. Nobody shoot at the planes, no lights on or anything. Big Guardian sat there with his carbine pump at him.
So there were Japanese on Okinawa when you were there?
Oh, yes, there was on Okinawa, yeah. This is on Mordecai.
Oh, I see. Mordecai.
And he'd sit there and pump at him his carbine, and the commanding officer would come out, kept Major Silken. There made no promiscuous firing the arms in the area, we were just outside the camp. Soon I just lost my head, Bigger, he said. Lost, he said nothing. We come back 5 minutes, he do the same thing. Got those Major Silken to come out and see what it was, just shake his head and turn around and go back in.
Well, I even guess you went fishing, right, on Mordecai?
Oh, yeah, he'd go up to the perimeter and the infantry was dug in, then he got out and there's a village there. And native village, and he'd go up around the corner there, come back and be gone, we didn't know what to do, he's gone 3-4 days. He'd come back in the bush, fish these streams, and then word was out, they was going to court martial and this and that, and well, it was about an hour before dark or something. He'd come back in and didn't shave, chewed tobacco very often, and they stopped the commanding officer's tent and say, I've been out fishing. Well, they already knew that. And he said, I've had a little luck and I found fresh fish and taste good, the boy. I think you could call the detail to help clean the fish, get a gunny bag full of fish. Finally, I asked him, I says, I know darn well that you can't catch these fish. We're on the equator. They're spoiled before you get them here. You got to catch them fresh. And he used hand grenades. I do them with demolition TNT.
But at least he wasn't court-martialed and everybody got something new to eat,
Oh,
right?
yeah, he was just like the project was fun returning.
Well, now, you have some, you were on Okinawa, which is what, about 100, 200 miles from the main coast of
And
Japan?
it was about 300 miles south.
300 miles south, okay. Do you remember when the war ended? Well, let's say this. Do you remember, did you hear about the atom bomb being dropped?
Yes, we did.
Okay, what was your thought about that?
Well, the new guys all whooping and hollering, we were putting all replacements in the outfit at that time. I think we got 140 new replacements in. It was about 49 of us had been all the way up through. And we got into a dugout we made out of sandbags. You couldn't dig it open all over. We made, they said, you guys are scared. We said, we know not to be. And we went into this dugout we'd made, the sandbag. They had stone there, the farming country, and the stone walls would be that far through. It was a field, you see it a field big as this room, a big field. And stone walls. That's what we built the fence with. And that's where we were when the war ended. And we got into America. We wasn't too sure. We'd heard too many things. We didn't believe the time.
Well, that was a technology that you couldn't believe. I mean, one bomb that could do something like that.
And they told us the war was over. That's what we done. I and a couple other fellows, good friends of mine, turned out. We had 350 caliber machine gun crews. The Marines was on that Okinawa. And for camp protection. This Tom I said, I was a loader. And I said, I was learning how to shoot that darn thing. And he said, he said, he always shoots the order first. He's been transferred from the infantry.
So the war is over, and now there must have been a short time. You heard the atom bomb had been dropped, and then that the Japanese had surrendered. Now, shortly after that, you and a few other men, I think 10 other guys,
There's 11 of us.
11 of you, went to Kayakanushu, an island off the coast of
Kanoia,
Kyushu.
yeah.
Um,
I got the right spelling of that here, I wrote my
okay.
girlfriend a letter.
Oh, okay. Now these are actual letters. Now she became your wife, right?
Yeah. I lost her about 7 months.
Oh, okay. Sorry to hear that.
Well, she Kanoia, Kanoia. Kanoia. And Kyushu is Kyusha. U instead of A.
Okay. What was it? Now you and 10 other guys end up on this island right after the war.
11 of us.
Yeah. Were you really sure that everybody on that island had heard that the war was over and that the Japanese had surrendered?
Well, this here friend of mine, I had what we called a Corporal O'Reilly. You've heard that.
Yeah.
We had a Corporal O'Reilly. His name was Beck.
Okay.
And he let us know, and Captain Stone, our commanding officer, at 8:30 the night, well, it was the night before this 1st of September, really, and last day of August, he wanted to see us about 8:30 at night. Well, my Corporal O'Reilly Beck had told me, he knew what was going on. And he was looking, he needed 2 men to go in to look the base over and see if there's 11 of us altogether, it turned out. There were 2 American-born Japanese interpreters. There were 2 radio operators and 2 crew chiefs. And we were supposed to figure out how many of them C-47s they could land and park there. Of course, there were bomb craters and there were unexploded bombs, all kinds of junk around, too much. And we were supposed to flag off them areas. And Captain Stone said I wouldn't let you guys go if I thought I'd be in trouble. He was a good man.
How were you treated on Kayakanushu by the Japanese?
Very well.
How do you think that was?
They were scared. They were whipped. They didn't want another atomic bomb. The military, we buzzed the runway, and there wasn't a thing in sight. We landed on there. There was both sides of the runway lined with Jap infantry. Because back to us and present arms, salute, to show respect. That's what they told us. Then we landed, and they come up with, I wasn't too sure about it right then, but I put my carbine and started to get out of the plane. The crew chief of the plane spoke to himself on the C-47. And he didn't do it, so he jumped right down flat-footed on the plane, and I went to hook the steps on the carbine, fell off in my shoulder. Down at the runway taxiway, it didn't go off.
Not the best entrance for the American soldiers on a new island.
No, and there was a newsreel camera out there taking a picture of it. That's the noise I heard. There was a Jap lieutenant there, and he was about more flustered than I was, as best possible. And he started to, he could speak good English. He started to rumble around there in Japanese, mixed English, finally got his word together. Welcome to and they had cold drinks for us and stuff.
Wow. So you were greeted very well.
Very well. Then there's 11 of us. There's 2 radio operators, 2 American-born Japanese interpreters, and 2 crew chiefs, myself and Barry Lewis. Another interesting thing, I called 30 years after that happened. I got my discharge on the 11th of November 1945. No Veterans Day.
Oh.
It just happened that way. And I decided to call the year before. I tried to call another fellow. And got his brother down in Illinois, and he got killed in an automobile crash 20 years before. 10 years before. And this year I called up Gary Novosad, and Rick Novosad. We're not in Texas, south of Houston, about 90 miles. And I dialed his number and someone answered the phone. And the operator asked for the number, and I told her, how old is this address? And I said, about 30 years. She was very cooperative. And she said, no, Novosad's down here. It's JF. And I said, let's put him on. And I talked to his wife and I said, is Jerry around? Yeah. So I talked to him and I talked to him probably 10 minutes. You don't know even know what you told me you were talking to. I kept getting interest.
So you saw him after that long?
I went down and seen him after that. And said, this person had contact. And I said,
While you were on Kyushu, you witnessed them bring some prisoners of war that the Japanese had been holding. Could you tell us about that?
Regadorn, Bataan, Waif Island, some places they didn't know there was any survivors.
What did they look like?
It was a hard-looking sight. They'd been working in coal mines, and these were the ones that covered with broken legs and arms and crooked that never been foot, crushed with club foot. And there's one Marine from Wake Island that weighed, he was about 6 foot 2 or 3. And I read, he said, fighting cheap, he was 200 pounds, he was 22 years old. He's down to 130 pounds, he looked like a man 70 years old.
Wow.
And a lot of them were down 150, 60 pounds. This one guy come in with club foot, and probably didn't weigh over 160 pounds. Said to me, he says, well, they got a hospital, field hospital. I said, I know 3 good ones down there. He broke right down sobbing. Now I can get this foot straightened before I go home.
So it's really evident that the Japanese had really mistreated.
They had this huge, according to the records of all the wars we've been in, well, I think 34% of the prisoners taken with the Japs never survived. And most other wars, all throughout history, maybe 2, 3, or 4% at the most.
So I take it the soldiers seeing this didn't feel too bad about the atom bomb being dropped.
Oh no, I thought that was a good idea.
What do you think would have been your fate if, as a soldier just off the coast of Japan, had the atom bomb not been dropped and they would have had to invade Japan?
Not good. Those old guys, this 49 had been up to, we knew that it was going to be a real pistol. We were waiting for it. We were all packed up and ready. But our chances, I talked to, well, there's one But he had talked to a couple of them since, and we figured our chances would have been darn small.
of surviving.
Yeah.
You had a chance to go through Yokohama and Tokyo after the war. I mean, right after the war.
I had to come home through there.
Yeah. What? How would you describe the destruction in those cities?
They were
Level.
I flew over Hiroshima.
Tell us about that.
When the pilot, see, the C-46 and the pilots used to get so many combat hours in, they could send them home. Well, these transport pilots, they had to get hours after the war was over. And they were, pilots said, "You guys want to fly over to Hiroshima?" On the way to Tokyo, and that's what he took us around and built the circuit.
So you were, what, flying over maybe a week or two after the bomb had been dropped?
Well, this is about
A month later. Yeah.
They've got some of the streets that trains is running. We see one train, and I mean, once in a very rare way a vehicle. And I guess I don't know if I ever saw a vehicle.
Okay, now you have a group of soldiers on the C-47, was it?
C-46.
C-46,
Yeah.
and you're looking down over the city that, well, the first city ever to have been hit by an atom bomb.
Hiroshima.
Or Hiroshima, yeah. What was the reaction of the people, you and the people on the plane?
We've seen bombed out areas before, but we've never seen, this was done with one bomb.
And that's what amazed everybody, that there was a weapon that could do that.
Yes, it was.
Was there much movement? I mean, you said there was a train, so there must have been some people moving around.
Well, this was about 6 weeks, a month or 6
Yeah.
weeks afterwards. They were, I didn't see anything on the streets, but there was some train that happened to be running through there. But the town was, Tokyo and Yokohama were, young, but that had tons and tons of high demolition.
So the bottom line is that Tokyo and Yokohama had been just as badly destroyed, but that took thousands of bombs and bombers. But Hiroshima was just one bomb. So the war is over, and how did you get back to the United States?
Well, he took us to the States.
On your return home, how did you get home?
I came back to the United States and I was picture.
Liberty ship?
It was Liberty ship. It was one that built for troops.
Okay.
I don't even know the name of it.
Troop ship. Now, before you got on that ship, how long had you been living in a tent? You're living in a tent in Okinawa, I think.
Well, Okinawa was the last place we lived in the tent.
Yeah, but before that, you in Morotai, you lived in a tent, probably New Guinea. So how long had you been living in a tent? So for 2 years, you've been living in a tent.
And I did start the time when I was studying too.
Okay. So for 2 years, you've been living in a
Probably
tent.
lived in tents for probably a little over 2 years.
Okay, you get back on a ship transport, now you're heading back home. Okay, how long did it take you to get home?
9 days.
9 days.
This is Jerry Novosad, who I mentioned him before. He and I were in charge of 350 11th Airborne and 2nd Cavalry in that fire. We were supposed to see if they got the place cleaned up and showed up for details and got everything. Things kept us working. It's kind of hard for discipline men coming from the
Yeah, I bet. But you had seen more duty. I mean, you had, what, been in the service now 3 years overseas?
I've been overseas for 40 months.
40 months, okay. A little over 3 years.
These boys were arguing who won the 11th Airborne and 2nd Cavalry, who won the war. I listened to that a little while and I said, where was the 41st Division and 32nd Division? And these guys are doing more. They was the ones that started and got the blood over right at the first. That was the end of the conversation.
What was your first view of the United States after 36 months? Well, 40 months.
Sun shining, coming over the Golden Gate Bridge.
The sun was shining when you left, though. It was cloudy.
It was overcast. And there was a blonde in shorts singing Urban Addis on Tugboat.
Oh, really? So they really greeted your ship?
Huh?
They really greeted your ship?
And he said one of the characters walked up and said, God, I thought them captain was
To see the hometown one. So you were, what, stationed at Angel Island for a little bit, and then you headed back to Michigan?
5 or 6 days, and I ran into this Captain Raimondi on Westbrook in California.
Mhm.
Romania. And ran into him there.
Huh.
He says, I see you got the staff sergeant on Thomas. He said, we know when you come, you Major Brigadier General.
So you got home by train then?
We went from there to Fort Sheridan. There were 9 of us that came all the way from the outfit together. That was one unusual. And we came to Fort Sheridan. I don't know, it took us about 5 or 6 days to come to us.
Can you tell us what your first feeling was? I mean, you saw the Golden Gate. Was it just relief, or, you know, was there some sort of emotional thing, or just by that time, just wanted to get home?
We were very happy.
I'll bet.
It looked awful good.
I'll bet. Did you get a chance to eat in any restaurants around the area, or?
Well, we went in. I had an uncle who lived in Alameda, California. And one of the guys and I got out. Well, we went first to the Camp Golden, about 3 miles out first. Oakland area.
Yeah.
And we went to town anyway. What are they going to do?
Yeah, that's true.
We got into town and we bet the guys we could go into town and get a piece of whiskey.
Can't blame you for that.
And we were coming out, we went up to the main gate, and of course we were in wrinkled and barracks back first khaki, but that's where we done. That was Lowell except us. Was up the main gate and walked out there, and God says, "Where's your pass?" And we're gonna be. He started unbuckling his 45. My gosh, Tom, they shoot you for going to town and all fast.
That's right. That's a little bit different than what you had back in the Highlands, right?
Well,
Yeah.
and we went in there and went in town. We come out of the liquor store. And we got the boys in the barracks. We could get them to children. And of course, we had figured out to sack it up.
Yeah.
Each had one, and got outside, and here's a Jeep that said basic and provost. You can't get caught anybody. And so you guys got in the bag, and shoes. That was very upgraded. Got tired of wearing these GI shoes, you know. So he said, you had a driver. Where's your camp? Got up to him, he said something, I didn't know what I was going. Showed the boys what was going with that. It was around, it was out in California, they get heavy rains, so he's going in the cyclone fence. He says, you see that? He said, that's government road. He says, you return, you aren't supposed to go through the main gate.
Well, they must have taken slack with the rules for you guys returning. I mean, they knew what you'd done
We
to.
got out of the Jeep, got back the outfit, we got out of the Jeep. He said, just a minute, boys. What's that? Don't drop your shoes. You might break them.
See what you had. What, I got a question. How difficult was it to readjust to peacetime? I mean, you'd been living 40 months in a tent or something close to that, and all of a sudden now you're back home, you know, in a completely different environment with only 5 or 6 days, maybe a couple of weeks at the most, as a buffer between
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Well, I had trouble with my vocabulary. Like we've been living in a man's world for 2 years, 4 years,
Yeah.
almost.
Anything else? I mean, just adjusting to a non-combat type area or the non-man's world.
Had trouble finding a cars.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Finally found a guy that had been in the service and got married. Had 39 children business. Big cars.
Just-
We were in a little trouble with this and the boiler, the youngest boiler wasn't in it. We were, Dad had a 39 Ford. About 200,000 miles. We had gone into Lansing and we walked to 27 there. Went through over. With the police because got on the bucket. The floorboard. They always said the police are going, I think the darn folks don't slow down. We got in Lansing, the outskirts of Lansing, we switched off the street.
Well, did you feel kind of like a general, just leave me alone type attitude after you got back? Let me ask you a few questions about communicating back home while you were in the service. You had a girlfriend, you said, and how long after you were back did you get married?
Well, let's see, got back in November, I got back November 12th. We got married in March, last month.
So not too much later.
I figured that I had a little adjustment in it. We could just,
Did she finally get your vocabulary back in shape?
we got a lot better. My mother was a school teacher.
Oh, that's right. So that wasn't tough for you.
I remember my grandmother was living in the forest. She was a little hard to hear, and grandma said she was in Australia, weren't you, Thomas? I said, what they raise there? And I said, not much of nothing. A lot of the companies up there. Said they raised a lot of it, and I says, yes. My mother being real proper, I got sent to the kitchen and got a lecture.
What, the letters, how often did you get letters from home? How often did you send them?
Oh, you had to send them, you had to send your folks, they called the Red Cross and find them there. Some of the boys, had this one guy that would always get called in whatever. And we sit down there. We got back to the States where I did 14, 16-page letter. It couldn't be published.
How often did you write your girlfriend or your wife?
Well, I wrote folks probably at least once every week, couple, 3 weeks. Sometimes you couldn't get where you couldn't.
Yeah.
And girlfriend was the first 2 years was done a pretty good job, but after that,
How often did she write you?
about every day, every other, at least once a week. Last time you wouldn't get the letter. You know, might be 6, 8 weeks for a good one. After, I don't think I got, I think I was reading the letter there, and I got 2 letters from home and Lowell from home.
What did it mean to get letters, I mean, from home for a soldier out there in the...
It was very interesting, refreshing. We had one guy named Otis, Sonic, an old master sergeant. I think he got 2 letters all the time he was over there.
Oh my goodness. So it must have been just good to hear from home and people still thinking about you. And...
Of course, we couldn't You could write, you could almost have someone write for at least two letters here, or two that have to write after censor ballot.
Well, do you have a picture of what those look like?
Look at the pictures, man. It's beautiful.
An interesting part about the war was most of the correspondence was censored. They would take a look at what you had written, and what you're holding up here, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, notice it says that this envelope had been gone over by the military. What was it like having to write letters where you knew that some censor was going to take a look at it? What was the normal routine with that?
Well, you just had to be careful because you get called in.
Now, what they didn't want was you giving the position and stuff like that, or what was it?
Let's say just one person working in the center, got called in on it. He was kind of a bullshit. Come back and said, really brilliant, Bill Bill Bomb. Things are pretty, censorship pretty strict around here. This is about all I can say. And he got called in because of that.
So what happened when you put something in a letter that the censors didn't like, that they thought would be militarily important to?
Well, I never got called in, but I think they run into one the other day that evidently the town was in the address up the top.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only one I run into that I didn't see.
What happened to other people though? I had heard that they would cut out portions that they didn't
Oh
want.
yeah, they'd cut a lot of it out.
So basically what some of these letters might have looked like when you sent them out was, how are you, I am
Well,
fine.
if you didn't come very much, you got called on the carpet and
Did they ever ask you to rewrite them?
yes, they did.
What did the guys think about that, or was that just taken, that's the way it was?
So, usually the bullshit would get done.
Oh, okay. He was the one that was the forerunner, right? You married your wartime girlfriend. How many children did you have? Two?
So I knew
Okay.
the daughter just called up, the son lived with me.
Oh, I see. Okay. How would you say your experience in the war affected you or influenced your life or future life?
Well, my brother and I came back from farming. We were working for Dad and probably made us more reckless.
Well, I could see where that would happen. You'd faced a lot of things that people hadn't.
Really. I think some of the old farmers out there thought we were nuts. They had us on broke and that probably should have.
But you tried new things and
Oh yeah, we
took
was
chances.
always experimenting. Daddy put a Lansing pickup. He was on the board of directors. Since he also farm girls and the Farm Credit Association. We go to Lansing, get all the farm rights there. We have a list of stuff from the pickup. And then down the bottom of the motor, 112 foot stuff, telecom.
Self-propelled.
We come in the middle of the afternoon, we come back and say, when are you gonna go get it? And what's that? It's that combine you guys ordered. That was, I think, the first time self-propelled combine in 100 pounds.
Is that right?
1952.
A lot of guys that went through the war, had their own businesses or did things like that. It was just, yeah. Maybe you learned to live that way after your experience. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about on this tape? Okay, great. Well, oh yeah, I'd like to. Could you show us your letter pouch before we close this tape? Now, this was the pouch that you carried your letters in and whatnot, your pictures.
Yeah.
This was what, about the only personal stuff you had other than your clothes? And this is what do you have in there now?
Well, I got one overseas cap, one of them.
Okay. You want to put it on?
I'm gonna probably get it on the back.
That was actually the one you had, right? Yeah, that's good. What else do you have there? I see you have some ribbons and
Well, that's,
some medals.
I don't know, I don't even know what they're for. We didn't, us 9 guys didn't go up to pick up the ribbons. I thought it was more important what we actually can never do.
Ribbons weren't so good as a ribbon.
There's the farm, I got a lot of them. There's an Australian bill.
From back in the 40s. Yeah.
10 shillings.
Oh.
There's a $2 bill. Not many of them around.
No. But this was what you actually carried. It was your personal.
Yeah.
That's probably all you could carry, right?
This went all the way with me.
Oh. Well,
They made that out of, originally one overseas was made out of paper, I guess.
oh really?
It didn't last very long, and I
Yeah.
had to zip it. This buddy of mine, Salvador J. Polito, he was a turkey breeder. He was in the phone.
Oh, I see.
This was made out of flight jacket leather.
Oh, sorry.
That's what they call moonlight refrigeration.
Oh, I see. Well, it lasted pretty well.
Oh, he's done a good job on it.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Westbrook, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story with us today, and certainly on behalf of the Lowell Area Historical Museum and the Library of Congress, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.
Good.
The following oral military history project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.